Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. This is an auspicious occasion for me to be with you. It's a great honor. And I'm happy that this visit to India came at this time. This is a very beautiful time in India. In Syria, we have started the winter season. It was a little bit cold. Here it is perfect for us. But this is not what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is that with all the talk about good weather, the situation in Syria is improving. And the developments have seen a resounding victory, not only for Syria against terrorism, but for all humanity. I do believe that once these destructive forces succeeded, then all of us will be suffering in Asia and Africa and Latin America, among Arab countries, because the so-called Arab Spring was expected to come out with results. These results are exactly what the Muslim Brotherhood have been planning together with some Western countries for a long time. Some may think this is very strange because the propaganda, international media, have been propagating these springs as if they are the solution for the many problems our world is witnessing. But it was really the opposite. Not only that, one of the foreign ministers of the United States openly said, you can go back to the internet, find out what she said. She said, but these people we were sponsoring, we were supporting, we were helping to get rid of the so-called despotic regimes in the Arab area. In fact, this was not the case. They wanted to change and to affect a geopolitical situation. You know, the struggles in the Middle East are there. They have been always there. And the Western powers found only this part of, some forces to affect the overall situation. In fact, they started with many countries in the region, started in Iraq, moved into Egypt at some point, then to Libya, then to Tunisia, to Yemen, everywhere in the region. I worked, Mr. Ambassador, for my country at the United Nations for 11 years. And the struggle between us as Arab countries and others was that they were always speaking about the need to change in Arab countries. They said, look, we defeated the Soviet Union. We have, the absolute power to effect any change. And you Arabs are not changing. Okay, we told them, in which terms do you want us to change? They said you have to change your position on Israel, you have to change your position on, Arab-Israeli conflict. You have to forget about the rights of the Palestinian people. Israel is there, you have to respect its presence, and you have to recognize that this is the way we want you to follow. Otherwise, you will see what will happen. I was part of this discussion in different United Nations fora and committees officially. I'm not speaking hypothetically or what they believe or what they think. This was directly put before all of us. But of course, Diplomats usually keep the talk inside closed doors or write reports to their own governments of what happens. And this is exactly what was at some point. And then they felt that the change should come. But I think they have chosen the wrong horse. They have not chosen a power that will change the situation in the region into a better situation. And this was deliberately done because they know that once they change the situation in the center of the world, which is Arab countries, then they can go beyond, either threatening different stable political systems, or they can tell them, look, once you don't obey our instructions, you will be in danger. Of course, they have to start the process one way or another. I don't want to speak about concrete countries before our eyes nowadays where the same pattern of behavior was followed. What I mean by that? I mean, they push a group of people, 10, 15, who are not aware of what's happening. And that's exactly what happened in Syria, in Egypt, in the Islamic Republic of Iran nowadays, among others. Oh, okay, you demand your so-called democratic rights, and the situation will be changing. They were thinking the situation in Syria will change in 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 1 month, beginning of the year, and Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr. And they were trying all these ways and means of misleading the people. But finally, I mean, the people have to understand that what happened in some Arab countries should not be repeated. Finally, the same powers have to go to Libya and invade Libya. Of course, now with my Egyptian brothers here, they know exactly what happened in Egypt. But the heroic Egyptian army and people were responding to these challenges and told them, no, you cannot succeed, which have kept the stability of the country and the achievements of the Egyptian people. But the situation in Libya now, I mean, who knows how it will evolve? Nobody knows. Because, okay, they said Gaddafi is so and so and so, you know, all the description, and finally they are there, but they cannot deliver. It is not a battle for democracy. It's absolutely not a battle for freedom and liberty, but it is for their own needs. The petrodollar issue is there in the content of the attack against Libya. In Tunisia, you know, the situation has not stabilized until now. Of course, we wish all these Arab countries will get more stability and go back, I mean, to a situation which helps the people. And if there is a need for people, then the people can make the change, but not to bring somebody from outside and tell them to affect the change. This is absolutely out of question. Particularly if these terrorist gangs were exported from faraway places, all the terrorists were allowed the freedom of movement. In the case of Syria, at least, the accounts given by Western powers to those who participated in the war against Syria have surpassed the number of 400,000 people coming from neighboring countries, particularly from our northern neighbor, Turkey. And now everybody is suffering. These people were blind. They have destroyed everything they could destroy. For example, if you look at pictures that came from Iraq after the Daesh control of certain parts of Iraq, there are monuments, historical monuments that go 2,000, 3,000 years, which were demolished by Daesh. And the American interest there was only in the central bank and the Ministry of Defense, which they protected very well. I mean, so that nobody could touch these two places. The same happened in Syria. We have a long history. Wherever you step in Syria, you find something related to history. And these are very dear historical monuments that were also demolished by these fanatics. For example, they speak about Palmyra in Syria. All of you are aware what's Palmyra. It was, built even before Islam came to Syria. But under the slogan that these are against Islam, they have plundered the places and they destroyed the heritage, not of Syria. This is a humanitarian, this is a human heritage. It is not only for Syria. This was registered on the UNESCO records as a world heritage, not to speak about other places. And when Prophet Muhammad alayhi salat came to Syria, these places were there. I mean, if they were against Islam, he would have ordered their demolition. But he was always appreciating the contribution of civilizations for the building of humanity and the human principles. Unfortunately, Western propaganda was dominating, particularly their misleading tactics against the leadership, against accusing us of everything, of killing our own people, and of not respecting the so-called principles of human rights, as if they have so much respect for human rights, which was always, since the beginning of the Cold War era, after the Second World War, an issue of propaganda. Of course, we have to respect the contribution of the United States or the Europe and their work in this field. But when they politicized these principles, they have employed them to serve their own interests. And this is the reality. We have not discovered, we were not the only country that discovered these contradictions, because to kill innocent people on the one hand by these terrorists, and then to say there is a violation of human rights, who is violating the human rights of others? Killing other people who are accused of violating the human rights of respective countries. This is absolutely no way. But what reaches the international community is the Western propaganda. Nobody will listen to our own media. No, on the contrary. The first thing they did in different cases was not to give access to respective countries to international media. The first thing they did in the Syrian case was to block any Syrian possibility to use international communications, exactly the same way they have used with the Russian Federation. We were really shocked when we heard that RT, the Russian system of communication, I'm not judging their, freedom to respond to the challenges the country is facing, But the Western countries have been always trying to convince all of us that the freedom of media and the freedom to think are holy things for them. The first thing they did in Syria was to block any access of the Syrian media, even to our own people in different parts of Syria, and to propagate only one way of media, which is their own media. I don't know whether this is freedom of thinking or freedom of media. It is the opposite. Since 2013, we have been struggling against the accusations made by the Western powers on the use or the pretext that Syria has used chemical weapons against its own people. This is funny. I was there. The place which they claim was bombarded by chemical weapons was not far from Damascus, which means if chemical weapons were used in Syria, they will affect the Syrians. I mean, including the government, because it was only 10 kilometers or less than that. Until today, the issue before the International Organization on the Prevention of Chemical Weapons is still there. And each day, the campaign against Syria is mounting. Of course, I have to thank all our friends, representatives of the countries who have said this is merely false propaganda. But resolutions are being made, adopted. Even the Russian Federation did not get, more than sometimes 3-4 votes conducted in the General Assembly or even in the Security Council. You can imagine to which extent the pressure by Western countries, including some of our friends, where ambassadors of the United States and their representatives go to each embassy to tell them you cannot vote against this draft resolution. And finally, we get what we see that may lead at some point to the disintegration of the international political system. That's why many countries are calling for a new international order, an order that will make the sovereignty of states the main principle that needs to be respected. Of course, if somebody dares vote against resolutions presented by the European Union or by the United States, then you are a traitor. Not only to your country, but a traitor on the international level. We have to establish an order that will respect every country and every people. We have been fighting now Daesh and its terrorist groups, Jabhat al-Nusra, the Muslim Brotherhood, for the last 12 years. Of course, now almost all Syrian territories are liberated. We have a Turkish presence in the west, supporting only in the city of Idlib, Daesh and the Muslim Brotherhood. The secular nature of Turkey, of course, is behind all of us now. Nobody speaks about that. And Turkey is occupying our territories under the disguise of protecting its own security. The thousands of terrorists who have come to Syria through Turkey, facilitated by Turkey, sent by Western countries and their allies, have devastated the country, as I have said. And hundreds of people, if not thousands, were killed, defending their country, defending themselves. I don't want to share Daesh what they believe. I don't want to believe that the Muslim Brotherhood are representing me, because Islam is not that religion that calls for killing others. Never. All the religions, the main religions, whether Islam or Christianity or Judaism, came in that part of the country. We are living together. All of them. Still, we are still living until today. But then those who contradicted, whose ideas contradicted with the message of Daesh were killed on the spot. Imagine two leaders of Daesh, I mean the top leaders, were killed in the north of Syria, in the land occupied by the Turkish army. Imagine these two leaders were killed inside territories under the control of the Syrian army. But nobody spoke about it. Nobody mentioned anything, as if this is a natural development. But when they killed bin Laden in Afghanistan, they have to throw his body, I mean, in the ocean so that nobody can remember him. But why these two, I mean, leaders who led Daesh after the killing of bin Laden were not dealt with the same way? Because they were in Turkey. Because those who have to be blamed for harboring them is the Turkish government. But the Turkish government is a NATO member. And they don't want, I mean, they want them to be active. When their end comes, they end them, and then they forget that they were supported by these Western countries themselves. And this is the reality of what happened in Syria. Now, Turkey is saying, we harbor something like 1 million people as refugees in Turkey. Yes. The camps were built even before the attacks against the Syrian government started. As I said at the beginning, they were thinking it is a matter of 5 days. They can harbor them, and then they will return back. But when Syria withstood all these attacks, and instead of having them for 5, 6 days, 1 month, 1 year, then 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5, 12 years of combating these elements, then they are now saying we have hosted millions of Syrians, and the international community should be helping us. But why did you start the whole war against a sovereign country, against a neighboring country? Before that, we were trying to build the best of relations with our northern, neighbor. But finally, because the Muslim Brotherhood ideology is there, then they have to push for the Muslim Brotherhood and Daesh, because Daesh is an offshoot, a more extremist offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is the reality of what's happening. Of course, they wanted to launch attacks against, using Islam as a banner for more trouble in all countries of the world. But finally, we see a lot of countries defending themselves because we succeeded in Syria. If we did not stop them in Syria, they would come everywhere. No country can spare itself from the menace of these terrorist agents. And of course, in the Northeast, we have American occupation, support for separatist groups that have found, an atmosphere, an environment to divide the unity of Syria. We have been living together for ages, for centuries. Nowadays, only, these groups come and say we want to secede from Syria. These so-called, we call them Kurdish, elements. Of course, we in Syria do not recognize, the ethnic background of our citizens. All of them are equal before the law and are together And we are fighting together with our in different communities against Muslim Brotherhood and Daesh. But then the United States have to establish herself in the Northeast and to support the separatist group. We have to be aware that they are supporting also other separatist groups in different parts of the world, just to weaken the government. But I go back to the stupidity of the Turkish government, because they have the same danger of separatist forces. As I said, they were thinking the battle will continue for 5-6 days, because in Turkey there are more than 15 million Kurds, and they claim that they are afraid of a similar separatist movement. Somebody may ask me, then why did they support this Muslim Brotherhood in Syria and others? My answer would be is that they were stupid, because when they did not think that weakening Syria and its army will help these separatist forces, and then the repercussions will be in Turkey herself, then I don't know how some politicians would not use neither wisdom nor political analysis of defining their priorities. Because when they support any disturbances in Syria, then they have to think that these will go there, including the extremist forces or groups that they depended on making or effecting a regime change in Syria. They did not succeed. And of course, some people may say the Syrian government used its forces excessively against so-called peaceful demonstrators and so on, which is absolutely out of question, because the government will not use excessive force against its own people. And if the overmajority of Syrians did not support their government, then their government will not be in a position to be there for 12 years fighting day and night. And this battle was not for the Syrian army, but it was for each individual. I remember sometime when the ministry I worked for, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I was the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, when even the rockets were falling on our ministry, trying to destroy it and to destroy us. But we did not care, because the homeland is the only thing that we need to harbor in our hearts, so that we have a homeland to live in. Because people who forget about their homeland, then they forget their honor, and they forget, I'm not accusing everybody, of course, but and dignity. Okay, you can leave for the United States or for Europe for economic reasons, but finally you have to go back for a homeland. Without a homeland, people will not have to think that others will respect them. You can stay wherever you like, but you have to have a homeland. Even in all religions, the homeland is a sacred thing for humanity, and we have to respect that. I spoke about the repercussions of different attacks and different conspiracies. Recently, Resolution 2642 was adopted in the Security Council. It calls for early recovery in Syria, for supporting, the destruction of the infrastructure and so on. Imagine today I was discussing with our Indian friends their support for Syria. We were having 24 hours electricity per day in 2010 until 2012. Even in the desert, where Bedouins have their camps, electricity was there. Nowadays, we have it only for 2 hours in Damascus, then 4 hours of cutoff, then 2 hours. Sometimes it doesn't come at all because we don't have oil, we don't have anything. And the oil is being stolen by the American forces in the Northeast, because in the Northeast, we have all our wealth. We have the water there from the Euphrates to Tigris. We have the oil in that part. And we have the wheat, because this is the most fertile part of Syria. Nowadays, we don't have oil. Our Iranian friends are, giving us oil. But of course, when you are importing, this will never be sufficient for your needs. And of course, we thank all our friends who are trying to help us. There is the gas in the Northeast. The Americans are blocking it, and they are smuggling it every day. 70 trucks take the Syrian oil to the north of Iraq and then to Turkey and other countries, selling it for themselves and for encouraging separatist forces in the northeast of Syria. When we were able to achieve our successes in the fight against terrorism, then we had to face a different challenge. This time, it is the unilateral coercive measures, or let me call it unilateral sanctions. Now, even if we want to buy medicine, we cannot buy medicine. We come to India because here is a bastion of human feelings and sense. They don't apply these sanctions because India has never believed in sanctions against peoples. In fact, these sanctions are not harming the government of Syria, but they are a tool of pressure on the Syrian people to pressurize their government to leave. And the government is strong. The people believe in the government. So for the last 7-8 years, of course, Syria has suffered sanctions since 1978, but they were not as harsh as they are today. It was the American policy. With Europe, we did not have a problem at that time. So the American sanctions were not applicable to Syria at that time. Nowadays, Europe have, under the pressure of the United States, joined the United States in imposing these sanctions. We cannot import food. We cannot import wheat because all the wheat in the north of Syria is in the lands occupied by Turkey, by the United States. We cannot import basic needs. I don't know how we shall cover this winter when it comes to the cold weather, because in some parts of Syria we have snow. In fact, as I said at the beginning, we are now the cold weather have started. In Syria, we cannot go like this. We have to have more clothes. I don't know how Syrian children will face another year of sanctions on oil, because nobody is giving us oil, except what I said about the Iranian help. And and they claim they are respecting human rights. And they say in their statements, Syrian children are suffering, Syrian women disabled are suffering. But these are just mere words to cover up for the real massacres they are committing in Syria. These people are not dying because of bombardment, they are dying because of sanctions. Hundreds of them. We don't have medicine. I mean, in Syria, all these public services, education is free of charge. It has always been the policy. It is given to everybody. The schools were destroyed. Many of the schools, thousands. Now we have more than 5,000 schools which are demolished because they were used by the terrorist groups. And we are calling the United Nations and other European countries. They say, no, you are under sanctions. And our children, many of them are finding it difficult to go to schools. In the health sector, we have our public system, which provides health care for everybody at the expense of the government. Now, of course, many of these hospitals were destroyed. I remember once I received the representative of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. They were asking us in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to go to a hospital in Aleppo. Frankly speaking, I told them, yes, you can go there. They said we shall take some humanitarian aid to that hospital. When he came back, okay, what did you find? He said, we did not find the hospital because it was used by Daesh. All the equipments, it was the best eye hospital in the Middle East, in Aleppo. And all the instruments were stolen, taken out to Turkey, together with our factories in the northern part of Syria, and given to Turkish companies. He said, I told him, okay, but what did you find there? He said, people with long beards, with children around them, carrying arms that are longer, taller than them, and they are using the hospital as a place for, as a camp for Daesh, and at that time Jabhat al-Nusra was there, the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the reality. So why I am bringing these facts into your consideration, it is because we have to stop these people from winning anywhere, and because the battle against them is a battle for all of us. We don't have to spare any effort in supporting those countries who suffer the menace of terrorism. They are dangerous to humanity. They should never be tolerated. They should never be accepted because they are not human beings. Nowadays, in Al-Vol camp, which is not under the control of the Syrian government, the American and Kurdish separatist forces have controlled the camp Al-Hol in the east, in the northern east of Syria. In this camp, there were something like 68,000 people. The majority of them, more than 70% or 80%, according to United Nations figures, are children. And women who were married to these jihadists, as they call them. And we don't know what to do with these because European countries where these terrorists came from are saying we don't accept it. We don't want these terrorists back to our own countries. In fact, they sent them to fight in Syria, but did not receive them as citizens of the European countries. And we are saying together with the United Nations that those sending countries should receive back their the presents they gave to Syria. Some of them are taking the children. They say, no, we cannot take the women. We can take the children because they are of European origin. Italians, Dutch, French, and so on. But they don't accept the women. Absolutely, they don't accept the men who they want them to remain in that camp, which is described by international organizations as inhuman. It is not for people to live there. Even, allow me to use this expression, animals cannot live there under the heat in summer and under the cold weather in winter and in camps. What we are telling them, yes, come to us and take your citizens back to your countries. We are helping them to do this. I don't want to take all the time, but I can tell our Indian friends that they faced the menace of terrorism. We sympathize with the Indian people. We are ready to work with the Indian people and the government in the field of combating terrorism. There is no precondition for this fight and for cooperation in the elimination of terrorism, because many people would feel that, hesitant to cooperate in security terms. But because now we are speaking, before this distinguished gathering, I'm saying that we are ready to work with the Indian government and with any other government on combating terrorism. As I said, terrorism is a danger for humanity. It should never be tolerated. It should never be accepted. And all our institutions, universities, schools, any civil institution should be empowered and enabled to play a leading role in combating terrorism. Terrorism should never be tolerated. This is the lesson we have come out with. And we shall always be ready to work with civilized countries like India, because what joined us, as you mentioned, is this civilization background, this legacy of cooperation among civilized people who understand the meaning of life and who understand that all of us were created by God and have to respect the will of God, but not the will of terrorists who kill life and who do not believe in any God, because they are against all our traditions, against our life, and against any international norms. Thank you very much, and I'm ready to answer all the questions because I would like to listen. I can choose to be there. Here is better.
So you will all agree that that was a very thought-provoking address delivered by His Excellency Dr. Fayssal Meqdad. And I thank you for your remarks. There were two major takeaways for me, and these were essentially the fact that the world needs to unite in the fight against terrorism. I'm heard by all of them in any case. So basically saying that the world needs to unite in the fight against terrorism and that it should do so by rising above the divisive politics of today, the divisive ideologies. And you rightly pointed out that India has also long faced the menace of terrorism. In fact, we have faced the menace of terrorism for many decades, long before the rest of the world woke up to the threat of terrorism. We have also suffered the consequences of what you might refer to as state-sponsored terrorism, where states use terrorism as part of their toolkit in order to, create problems in neighboring countries. So I think what you said hits a chord in this eclectic audience that's made up of strategic experts, diplomats, people from the armed forces. The other key message that you gave us, Foreign Minister, is that the world also needs a very big dose of what you might call humanity itself, core values. The world needs a new moral compass to guide it into the future. With these few words, I would like to now invite brief and to the point questions from the audience. I will take 3 at a time, and much will depend on how much time His Excellency is willing to spend with us. So may I request you to raise your hands for the first round, and please introduce yourself and do kindly restrict yourself to a question. Yes, please.
Thank you, Excellency, for this talk today. I'm Deepika Saraswat, Associate Fellow at the Institute, and I study Iran. So I would like to ask a question about the phase of reconstruction that you referred to that has now begun in Syria. And if I remember correctly, in 2017, after Syria was able to, Syrian security forces captured Al-Bukamal and the Iraqis, the Al-Qaim transit, there was talk of this trade and transit corridor connecting Iranian ports to Syrian and Lebanese port on the Mediterranean. So I was hoping to get your comments on the feasibility of this massive infrastructure project that has long been in talk, but
Thank you. Any other question from the floor? Yes, back there, please.
I hear you.
Am I audible? Yeah. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful talk. My short question is, we saw what happened during the Arab Spring, the spread of radical ideologies. As a long-term solution, what do you think, how does the Syrian government plan to tackle radicalism, not terrorism, but radical ideology spreading in the whole of the country by the radical ideologies such as Muslim Brotherhood, which are backed by Turkey and Qatar, which are state-sponsored, as DG sir earlier spoke about.
Thank you. I think the 3 questions are really relevant, are direct to the point. On the first question, yes, I mean, countries are working together, cooperating. I think some countries are raising the idea of the Silk Road that will, I mean, cover all of us. So it is natural to encourage regional cooperation, including this idea of establishing economic ties with our direct neighbors, because we have different interests. But of course, these ideas are not limited to, I mean, 3 or 4 countries. They are open for everybody, I mean, because economically speaking, we have to work, all of us. If in India we need medicine, then we have to open the way and to see how to establish certain methods, whether it is this road, I mean, from Iran to Baghdad to Damascus. I don't know the relevance because The presence of American troops in the south of Syria is just to prevent this from taking place. They believe that this direct line will not help Israel. That's why the United States is giving itself the responsibility of protecting Israeli interests. Of course, I mean, we shall not use this road for military aspects or mobilization. This is a different story. But when this kind of road, for example, is established, then Indian goods would go easily to Syria instead of waiting to for an shipment to reach. Then in 5 or 4 days, Indian shipments to the region will go directly. Now people are thinking of this road from the south of Asia into Russia, into the north of Europe, and then to all countries of the European Union. We did not express any hostility to such a building, but we think all efforts by the countries to deepen their bilateral and multilateral cooperation should be open. The United States should not look for its own interests only. It should look for the interests of the peoples. Then, what was the second question? Yeah, a local, of course, we are discussing with different countries this possibility, which has become very important and relative after the sanctions recently imposed by the European Union and the United States on Russia. You know, even I think the European Union has sanctioned big amounts of money in their banks that go back to private companies in the Russian Federation. So this possibility should be there. I think it will make it easier for exchanges between our developed countries. All of them have now great problems. You know, for I don't know how many cents the United States pays for printing each dollar, 2-3 cents. But then it gives us, the headache in Syria now. Before the war in Syria, the currency rate was 45 to 48 Syrian pounds against the dollar. Now it is 5,000 something. In Lebanon, it is more than that. It is something like 38,000 Lebanese pounds against each dollar. It was less than 3,000-4,000 pounds a few years ago. But under the circumstances, the Lebanese people are devastated, and the Syrian people are devastated. Because what's happening is that the United States is printing paper, giving us, this paper, and taking against it all the natural products at a very cheap price. So we believe that countries of the world have to be aware of how much money is being taken by the United States by forcing its peoples to establish misleading figures of national currency against the dollar. Yes, we are investigating this possibility, and we have started taking concrete measures in this regard. The third question, radicalism. Yes, what you said is really correct. What we are doing is exactly what you said. We are trying to educate our people, schools, universities, through public media. That's why we achieved something, because in countries like Syria, Egypt, and so on, the media is oriented against radicalism, is oriented against, radical Islam or any radical other thing. I mean, radicalism is not limited to Islam. It also, could be taken by others from all religions. But of course, some people are speaking about Islamophobia. We believe that this is wrong, and all of us should respect each other. Whatever religion, whatever ideas, whatever, concepts that people believe in should be respected, but not to be put in the hands of radicalism to go and kill others because they believe the other is wrong and we are, correct. And you can see the effects of such a thing, whether in Europe or in Asia or in the Middle East, or, of course, I'm happy that in almost African countries, we don't have the same, but in Latin America, you may have it in political terms, different terms. So we have to employ our efforts to combat radicalism, and the media is playing a very important role in this respect.
Do I see any more questions from the floor? Yes, Dr. Mudassir.
Thank you. Can I answer
Yes,
this
of course,
question?
please.
Astana is going to meet again on the 21st, 22nd. The three main countries, namely Russia, Iran, and Turkey, will meet. A Syrian delegation from the government will be there, and other observers are invited, neighboring countries of Syria, namely Jordan, Iraq, and Jordan, Iraq. Who else? Okay, it will come. So I hope, the Astana process has, in fact, moved the negotiations in a good direction. We are committed to respecting the results of all these meetings, and we hope the forthcoming meeting, of course, I know what are the drafts which are going to be presented to the next meeting, but one of them is dealing with the kidnapped people, with the missing people. And I hope some good news will come about that, because we, on the part of the Syrian government, are ready to work together with these countries to see how an inter-Syrian process will result at the end of the exercise, of a political exercise, to find a solution that will satisfy the needs of the Syrian people. A process which will be among the Syrians, for the Syrians, by the Syrians, without any international or foreign interference.
I think we have completely run out of time, I'm afraid, and His Excellency has other engagements as well. So with this, I will bring to a close this wonderful session, which has seen Dr. Fayssal Meqdad, His Excellency, Foreign Minister of Syria, address us. Thank you all very much, and we will, I think, request the MC to come back on, and may I request you, sir, to kindly take your seat.